Friends, peace be with you. I'd like to begin by thanking the organizers of this talk for making this possible. My wife and I are very pleased to be with you here this evening. The topic of our discussion this evening is the American Empire, Globalization, War, and Religion. It is perhaps appropriate that someone from Asia should talk about the American Empire, for the American Empire was born in Asia. It was born on the 6th of August, 1945. It was born on the day that the United States of America decided to drop the atom bomb on Hiroshima. It was born on a day when almost 170,000 human beings were obliterated from the face of the earth. By dropping that bomb, the United States announced to the world that it was the planet's most preeminent power. The unsurpassed superpower of the age. The United States sought to shape the world according to its vision of what the world should be immediately after the war. It set up the United Nations, where the United States had the veto, and 4 other nations, who were all its allies at that time, had the veto. It helped to establish the International Monetary Fund, the IMF, the World Bank, and even before the war had ended, the organization called GATT, the predecessor of the WTO. In other words, the United States was going to create an international order where it would be dominant. But then a couple of events happened in 1949, which in a sense thwarted the dream of Washington. In 1949, the Soviet Union, an ally of the United States in the war, decided to invade various parts of Eastern Europe, right up to East Germany. The Iron Curtain descended across Europe, to use the phrase of Winston Churchill. That was a momentous event. There was a challenge to American power. Something else happened in 1949. In October 1949, the Chinese Revolution took place. China, again an ally in the Second World War, became a foe. Communism emerged as a challenge to American dominance. And for the next 40 years, we were witnesses to the Cold War. The Cold War saw not just communism challenging American dominance, but also yet another phenomenon, which turned out to be even more formidable, a phenomenon called nationalism. A number of new states emerged after the Second World War, independent, sovereign, assertive, conscious of their place on earth. These states were not prepared to lose their independence. And at times, communism intertwined with nationalism, as it happened in the case of Vietnam, because the Vietnamese movement was primarily a nationalist movement which had a communist orientation. And that was a challenge to the United States of America. In fact, the only real defeat that the superpower had suffered was in Vietnam. There were other challenges to the empire. OPEC, the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries, was also in a sense a challenge to OPEC. Again, an attempt by newly emerging countries to mobilize their own resources and protect their own resources, something which the empire was not happy about. But in spite of these challenges, the United States triumphed in the Cold War for a number of reasons. It triumphed because from the end of the Second World War, right up to this day, American economic power began to expand. The multinational corporations were a very important vehicle for the expansion of American economic power. This was accompanied by the expansion of American media power, a very important source of influence and dominance. Equally important was expansion of American entertainment power. Again, a very important source of influence, shaping people's minds. And this happened over a number of decades. So the United States, in the midst of all these challenges, from the newly independent states, from the communist states, remained powerful. At the same time, the communist states were emasculated in different ways. They were emasculated through their own internal rivalries. One very big blow to communism was the Sino-Soviet Clash, which began in 1956. It weakened the communist camp. Communist states were not able to deliver the goods, especially to the changing class structure in their respective societies. The working class had expanded, the middle class had arisen, and communist states could not go beyond providing basic needs of their people. This is one of their failings. There was political repression. There was cultural inertia. There was social drabness in these states. The newly independent states also had their share of failures. There was corruption, abuse of power, political repression in a number of states. And there were also rivalries between these newly independent states. And one of those conflicts which dealt a mortal blow to the solidarity of these newly emerging states was the Iran-Iraq war, which weakened OPEC considerably. It weakened the non-aligned movement. It weakened the Organization of Islamic Countries. So you had a situation where, partly because of its own strength, and partly because of the weaknesses of its rivals, of its adversaries, the United States emerged triumphant.